You know that moment when you're 3 months into a new relationship, or maybe you just made a new friend, or you've started working with someone new, and suddenly you get that sinking feeling in the stomach. That, oh no, not again feeling. It's like watching a movie you've already seen. You know how this ends. You've been here before, different person, same story, different face, same patterns. Different name, same pain. And the worst part? You can feel it happening in real time, but you can't seem to stop it. It's like being on a train that you know is heading towards a crash, and you're just sitting there watching the scenery go by, knowing exactly what's coming. I want to tell you something that might sound strange at first, but stay with me. You're not broken, you're not cursed, you don't have bad luck with people. And no, it is not because all the good ones are taken, or because you're too nice or not enough of something. What is actually happening is way more interesting than that. And once you understand it, everything changes. Let me share something personal. About 8 years ago, I kept attracting the same type of romantic partner. I'm talking unbelievable similar. Same communication style, same emotional availability issues, same way of making me feel amazing one day and invisible the next. After the third person in a row who fits this exact template, I started thinking something was seriously wrong with me. I read all the books. I went to therapy. I made a list of green flags and red flags. I promised myself I'd be different, choose different, do different. And then I met someone new. They seemed completely different on the surface. Different job, different background, different interests. I was so sure this time was going to be different. 3 months in, same exact pattern, same emotional roller coaster, same ending. I remember sitting in a car after our final conversation, just completely defeated. Not even sad anymore, just exhausted. And I asked out loud to no one in particular, what am I doing wrong? Here's what I didn't understand then. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was doing something very specific, very consistent, and very unconscious. I was broadcasting a signal, and that signal was answered with perfect precision every single time. Imagine for a second that reality isn't just one single track. Imagine it's more like Netflix. Stay with me here. You know how Netflix has thousands of different shows and movies all existing at the same time? You're not watching all of them at the same time, but they are all there, all available, all fully formed and ready to play. You just have to select which one you want to watch. Reality works in a similar way. There is an infinite field of all possible scenarios, all possible versions of your life, all existing at the same time. Every possible type of relationship you could have, every possible friend you could meet, every possible version of events, they are all there, like shows in a catalog. But here is where it gets interesting. You're not randomly stumbling into these different versions, you're selecting them. You're choosing which show plays in your life, except you're doing it in an unconscious way through what I call your energy broadcast. Think of it like this. You know how your phone is constantly sending and receiving signals? Wi Fi, Bluetooth, cellular. You cannot see those signals, but they're there, connecting you to specific networks, specific devices, specific information. You're doing the exactly same thing, but with your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and energy. You're constantly broadcasting a signal, and that signal is tuning you into specific versions of reality where certain types of people and situations exist. Here's the part that might sting a little, but it's also the part that sets you free. The people you are attracting aren't accidents. They are not random. They are not even really them. It's not about them. They are perfect reflections of your broadcast signal. Let me break this down with my own example. When I was attracting those emotionally unavailable partners, I thought I wanted a healthy, stable, loving relationship. I would have told you that's what I wanted. I really believe that's what I wanted. But here is what I was actually broadcasting: a deep belief that I wasn't worthy of consistent love, a fear that if someone really saw me, they would leave, an addiction to the highs and lows because steady felt boring, a need to prove I could fix someone because then I'd finally be valuable, a comfort with chaos because it was familiar from my childhood. I didn't consciously think any of these things, obviously. If you'd asked me, I would have denied it all. But on energetic level, on the level of the signal I was broadcasting into reality, that is what I was putting out there. And reality, like a perfectly tuned radio, was giving me exactly the station I was tuned into. This is what I call being on a specific track. A track is like a trajectory through all those possible realities. And the specific track you're on is determined by your broadcast, your consistent thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. The people showing up in your life aren't creating your experience, they are confirming the track you're already on. Think of yourself as having an invisible antenna on top of your head. This antenna is always broadcasting 24/7, even when you're sleeping. It broadcasts the sum of what you believe about yourself, what you believe about other people, what you believe about relationships, what you believe you deserve, what feels familiar and safe to you, what you're afraid of, what you're trying to avoid, what unresolved wounds you're carrying. And all this creates a very specific frequency. And that frequency calls out to people who are on a matching frequency. This is not magic, it's not woo, it's actually physics, just on a level we don't usually pay attention to. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt someone's energy? You can't explain it, but you can feel when someone is anxious or angry or happy. That's you picking up on their broadcast. you do it all the time without realizing it. And well, other people are picking up on yours too. When I was broadcasting, I'm not worthy of consistent love, but I'll try really hard to earn it. Guess what? I was attracting people who were broadcasting, I am not capable of consistent love, but I want someone to try really hard for me. Perfect match? Terrible relationship. Now, before you think this is another lecture about fixing yourself or doing more inner work or trying harder to be better, let me stop you right there. Because here is where most relationship advice gets it all wrong, and why you've probably tried everything and still ended up with the same type of people. When you try to force a different outcome through willpower, you will actually make the problem worse. It's like, imagine you're holding a radio that's tuned to a static field station playing depressing music, and you're holding a sign in front of the radio that says, "This is playing happy music." The sign doesn't change what's actually playing. The signal is still the signal. When you do affirmations without addressing the underlying broadcast, when you make vision boards without shifting your actual frequency, when you promise yourself you'll choose differently while you still carry the same wounds, you're just putting up signs. You're not changing the station. And here is what is happening. You create a tension between what you're trying to project and what you're actually broadcasting. And reality has this built-in mechanism that immediately works to eliminate that tension. Ever notice how when you try really hard to attract a certain type of person, you either attract the opposite or you attract someone who seems right but then quickly reveals themselves to be exactly what you don't want? That's this mechanism at work, eliminating the tension you created. It's like the universe is calling you, "Hey, you're just bluffing." Here's another crucial piece that explains why this pattern is so hard to break: collective programming. There are these massive energetic structures created by groups of people thinking and feeling the same way about something. I call them collective thought patterns. They are fed by millions of people's emotions, experiences, and beliefs. And once they get strong enough, they start to control people rather than the other way around. Take a moment and think about cultural beliefs about relationships. There are massive collective thought patterns around ideas like love is supposed to be hard. You have to work for a good relationship. There is something wrong with you if you're single. Everyone cheats eventually. You can't trust people. Good people finish last. All the good ones are taken. These aren't just ideas, they are energetic structures that millions of people have fed with their emotions, their experiences, their fears, and stories. And these structures actively pull people in, trying to get them to conform to these patterns, because that's how they survive, by getting more people to think and feel the same way. When you keep attracting the wrong people, you're usually caught in one of those collective patterns. Maybe it's a familiar pattern. Your parents had a certain type of relationship dynamic, and you unconsciously absorb that as normal. Maybe it's a cultural pattern about what love looks like. Maybe it's a pattern created by past hurts that say, protect yourself by choosing people who can't really reach you. See, these patterns are sneaky because they feel like your own thoughts. They feel like reality. They feel like just the way things are. But they're not. They're just the track you happen to be on, fed by collective pattern you happen to be caught in. And here's the really tricky part. These collective patterns don't want you to live. They literally feed off your emotional energy. Every time you feel heartbroken, frustrated, angry, disappointed, you're feeding the pattern. You're making it stronger, and it pulls you back in. Let me get really specific about one type of person people keep attracting because it illustrates this principle perfectly. Energy drainers. You know the type. The person who always has drama, who always needs something, who makes you feel amazing when they're happy with you and absolutely terrible when they're not. The person who takes and takes and takes, and somehow you keep giving even though you know better. Here is what is happening from the energy perspective. Energy drainers are people who learned to get their life force from other people's emotional reactions. They create situations that made you react with sympathy, with anger, with guilt, with the need to fix or save or help. When you react emotionally, you're feeding them energy. You're enabling them. But here is the key. They can only drain you if you're on a track where that dynamic is possible. What does that mean? It means you have to be on a matching broadcast. You have to broadcasting on some level. I'm responsible for other people's emotions, or my value comes from being needed, or I don't deserve peace unless I've earned it by helping someone, or perhaps other people's needs are more important than mine. The drainer is not creating these beliefs in you, they are responding to them. They can sense on an unconscious energetic level that you're a match for their pattern. I used to attract friends who would dump all their problems on me, call me crying at 2 a.m., needing constant reassurance and support, but somehow never being available when I needed something. Not once or twice, consistently. It was like I had a sign on my forehead that said emotional dumping ground, always open. And obviously, I would get so frustrated. Why did these people keep finding me? What was wrong with them? Wrong question. The right question was, what am I broadcasting that makes this dynamic possible? The answer was that I had this deep belief that the only way I could be valuable to people was by being useful, by being the helper, the supporter, the one who was always there. And if I wasn't needed, then what was I? That broadcast was a beacon for people who needed someone to need them. There's another piece that's crucial for understanding why we keep attracting wrong people. And it's about the meaning we assign to things. When you assign excessive value, either too high or too low, to something, you create an energetic imbalance. And reality always works to restore balance. The problem is, it doesn't restore it the way you want. Let me give you an example. There was a period when I was so desperate to find a partner. I had all this meaning attached to it. If I found the right person, then I'd finally be happy. Then I'd be complete. Then my life would really start. Then I could prove to myself that I was doing okay. Then I wouldn't feel so lonely. That's massive overvalue. I had inflated the idea of a relationship to the point where it meant everything. My happiness, my completeness, my worth, my validation, my cure for loneliness. Guess what happened? The harder I tried, the worse it got. I either attracted no one, or I attracted people who seemed perfect initially and then revealed themselves to be completely wrong for me. Every first date felt like a job interview where I was failing. Every promising connection fizzled out. The universe was literally pushing it away from me to restore balance. But here is where it gets tricky when attracting the wrong people. Sometimes reality doesn't push the things away. Sometimes it gives you a distorted version of it. When I finally did attract someone during that desperate period, it was a disaster because I had so much meaning attached to having someone. I was willing to overlook massive red flags. I was broadcasting, I need someone, anyone, please. And I got someone. Not the right someone, just someone. The excessive value I placed on not being alone was so high that it overrode every other criteria. My broadcast was not, I want a healthy, compatible partner. It was, I need not to be single right now. And reality delivered exactly what I was asking for. Here is something that might blow your mind. The people you keep attracting are not on the wrong track. You are. Let me explain what I mean. Remember how I said reality contains all possible scenarios? That means there is a version of you where you consistently attract healthy, compatible, wonderful people. And that track exists right now. It's not something you have to create or earn or become worthy of. It's already there. But you're not on that track. You're on a different one. The one where these patterns keep repeating. And the reason why you're on this track instead of the other one is because of your broadcast, consciously or unconsciously. Your consistent thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and energetic signature you're putting out. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold is like a vote for which track you're on. Most people don't realize this, so they keep thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, holding the same beliefs, and then wondering why they keep getting the same results. It's like complaining that you keep ending up in the same neighborhood while you're actively driving there every single day. The car, your consciousness, goes where you point it, which is determined by your broadcast. When you keep attracting the wrong people, you are on a track where those people exist and you are a match for them. To change what you attract, you don't need to change them. You don't need to scream better or have better boundaries or be more careful. They're useful. But what you really need to do, you need to change tracks. Every person who shows up in your life is a mirror. I know you've probably heard that before, but let me tell you what it actually means in practical terms. They are not mirroring who you are as a person. They are mirroring your broadcast. They are showing you in physical form what you're putting out energetically. When I kept attracting emotionally unavailable partners, they weren't showing me that I was emotionally unavailable, though, to be honest, I kind of was. They were showing me that I was broadcasting I'm not safe for real intimacy, mixed with I really want connection, mixed with I don't believe I deserve consistent love, mixed with I don't believe I can consistently love someone. And guess what? We found each other like magnets, not because we're meant to be together, but because we are on the same frequency. The friend who always needs rescuing, they were mirroring back the broadcast that said, I need to be needed to have value. The person who's hot and cold, they are mirroring the internal uncertainty about whether you deserve good treatment. The person who's critical and judgmental, they are mirroring the voice in your head that's critical and judgmental of yourself. This is not about blame. It's not about you attracted abuse or you deserved mistreatment. That's garbage. Absolutely not. What it is about is understanding that the people in your life are showing you what track you're on. They're giving you information about your broadcast, their feedback. And once you see it as feedback instead of fate, everything changes. Here is something wild that I realized. Every relationship operates on an invisible agreement. You don't sit down and sign a contract, but on an energetic level, you are both agreeing to play certain roles with each other. You are both agreeing to be on the same track together. In my pattern with emotionally unavailable partners, the invisible agreement was something like I agree to chase and try to earn your love. You agree to withhold and make me work for it. I agree to make you the center of my world. You agree to be inconsistent enough to keep me hooked. I agree to ignore my own needs. You agree to be just present enough that I don't leave. Neither of us spoke these words. Neither of us would have said that this is what we wanted. But energetically, This was the agreement we're both operating from. And here's the kicker: we couldn't have had that dynamic if we both weren't broadcasting the matching frequencies that made it possible. I couldn't chase someone who wasn't running. They couldn't withhold from someone who wasn't trying to earn it. The relationship was a perfect dance of two broadcasts that matched. When you keep attracting the same type of person, you keep entering into variations of the same invisible agreement. Different person, same contract. You ever notice how sometimes you meet someone and you just click instantly? Or how sometimes you can feel someone's vibe before they even speak to you? That's because you're picking up on their broadcast and they're picking up on yours. People who are going to fit your pattern can sense you. It's like they have radar for your specific frequency. I remember being at a party once during that period where I was attracting all those emotionally unavailable partners. There were probably 50 people there. Within an hour, I was deep in conversation with someone who, surprise, surprise, turned out to be emotionally unavailable. Think about it. Out of 50 people, we found each other. That's not coincidence, that's frequency matching. Your broadcast goes out before you even open your mouth. It's in your body language, your energy, the way you move through space, the subtle signals you send out. And people who are a match for this pattern pick up on it immediately, usually without even realizing they're doing it. It's like, you know how dogs can hear frequencies that we humans can't? People are picking up on frequencies about each other all the time. We just don't consciously register it, but unconsciously. We are all walking along and around with invisible signs that say exactly what we're broadcasting. And the people who are a match for that broadcast can read those signs perfectly. One of the biggest reasons we keep attracting the wrong people is because wrong feels right. Let me say that again. Wrong feels right. If you grew up in a unpredictable household, chaos feels like home. If you grew up with inconsistent love, inconsistency feels familiar. If you grew up having to earn affection, having to work for love feels normal. Your nervous system is wired for what it knows, not for what's good for you. So, when you meet someone healthy, stable, consistent, and available, your system doesn't recognize it. It might even feel boring, flat, like something is missing. Sure, what's missing is the drama, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the need to prove yourself. All the things that you felt like love to your younger self. All the things that you were familiar with, even though they weren't healthy. I can't tell you how many times I met good, available people and felt nothing. No spark, no chemistry, no excitement. Know what I did feel chemistry with? People who triggered my wounds. People who made me feel the way I felt as a child. Like I had to perform to be loved, like affection was conditional, like I could lose it all at any moment. That familiar anxiety felt like passion. That familiar uncertainty felt like excitement. That familiar need to chase felt like desire. My system was wired to recognize those feelings as love. And so my broadcast kept calling out for more of it. Even though consciously, obviously, I was trying to choose differently. This is why you can know better and still do the same thing. Your conscious mind wants healthy, your unconscious broadcast is screaming for familiar. Pay attention to the story you tell about your relationship history. Do you tell it like, I always attract people who, or every time I date someone, they, or nobody ever? That story, that's your broadcast in narrative form. Every time you tell that story, you're reinforcing the pattern. You're voting for the same track. You're tuning into the same frequency. I used to tell this story. I always attract emotionally unavailable people. Every single person I've dated has been the same. I must have a sign on my forehead. And guess what that story did? It made attracting emotionally unavailable people part of my identity. It wasn't just something that happened to me, it was who I was, the person who attracts emotionally unavailable people. That story was a prophecy that kept fulfilling itself. Because every time I told it, I was broadcasting it. And every time I broadcast it, reality said, oh, okay, here is another one. The story you tell about yourself becomes the track you're on. Here is something uncomfortable. Sometimes we keep attracting the wrong people because we are terrified of attracting the right ones. I know that sounds backwards. Why would anyone be afraid of finding a healthy relationship? But think about it. A healthy relationship means you have to show up as yourself, not as a performed version. You have to be seen, really seen, flaws and all. You can't hide behind fixing or saving someone, and you can't use drama as a distraction from your own stuff. You actually have to receive love, which requires believing you're worthy of it. You have to risk real intimacy, which feels vulnerable as hell. For a lot of us, that's terrifying. It is much safer to attract people who confirm our unworthiness. It's much easier to attract people who can keep at arm's length emotionally. It's much more comfortable to attract people who give us a reason to not fully commit. I realized at some point that I was attracting emotionally unavailable people because I was emotionally unavailable. Not in the same way they were, but in my own way. I wasn't available for real love because real love required me to believe I deserve it. And deep down, I didn't. So my broadcast kept calling for people who would confirm that belief, not challenge it. The wrong people felt safer than the right ones. Here is something I wish I had understood earlier. Your body knows who's wrong for you before your mind figures it out. You know that feeling you get sometimes when you meet someone? That subtle tightness in your chest, that slight knot in your stomach or in your throat, that sense of, something is off that you can't quite name. That's your body picking up on the broadcast mismatch. Or sometimes it's the opposite. You feel this intense pull towards someone, this magnetic attraction, and you think it's chemistry or fate or, the one. But if you pay close attention, that feeling often has an edge to it, an anxiety, a need, an intensity that's more about activation than actual connection. Your body is responding to the familiar pattern, the wound recognition, the, oh, I know this dance. I used to mistake anxiety for excitement. That nervous butterfly feeling I got around certain people, I thought that was attraction. I thought that was how you were supposed to feel. Turns out, it was my nervous system recognizing a familiar threat and gearing up for the emotional roller coaster I knew was coming. Meanwhile, when I met people who were actually good for me, I felt calm, settled, at ease. And I interpreted that as no chemistry. I had it completely backwards. Your body is constantly giving you information about people's broadcasts and whether they match yours in healthy or unhealthy ways. But most of us have been taught that to override those signals, we gotta do that. We have to override them in favor of what we think we should want or what looks good on paper or what gives us that addictive hit of intensity. A lot of times we keep attracting the wrong people because we haven't given ourselves permission to want what we actually want. Maybe you are taught that having standards is being too picky, that wanting to be treated well is being high maintenance, that expecting consistency is asking for too much, that desiring passion and stability is unrealistic. So you settle, you compromise, you talk yourself into people who are good enough, or not that bad, or oh well, better than being alone. And your broadcast reflects that. It says, I'll take whatever I can get. I don't really believe I deserve what I want, and I'm willing to accept less. And reality delivers exactly that. I spent years not allowing myself to want what I actually wanted because it felt greedy and unrealistic, or like I was asking too much. What I really wanted was someone who was emotionally available, kind and loving, and intellectually stimulating, and handsome, and share my values, and lots of fun, and witty, and had dreams, and actually working towards something big, a vision, and was actually ready for commitment. Every time I would list those things out, a voice in my head would say, nobody's perfect. You're being too picky. You need to be more realistic. So I'd compromise. I'd find someone who checked 3 out of 6 boxes and tried to convince myself it was enough. And then I'd be shocked when the relationship didn't work. The 3 boxes that they didn't check, those were the 3 things I actually needed. The things I wasn't giving myself permission to require. Your broadcast can only call for what you are giving yourself permission to want. So, after all of this, you are probably wondering, okay, I got it. So, how do I actually change this? How do I change my broadcast? How do I get on a different track? Here is the truth. You can't force it. That's the whole point. Trying to force a different outcome through willpower is using the same energy that created the problem in the first place. What you can do is start to shift your awareness. Start to notice. Notice your patterns without judgment. Notice what types of people you attract and ask yourself, what am I broadcasting that makes this possible? Notice the story you tell about your relationship history. Is that story serving you or keeping you stuck? Notice what feels familiar versus what feels good. Are you choosing people based on comfort or chemistry with your wounds? Notice that invisible agreement you're entering into. What roles are you agreeing to play? Notice what you're afraid of. Are you avoiding healthy relationships because they require you to show up differently? The shift starts with awareness, with seeing the pattern for what it is. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, You start making different choices, not from force, but from understanding. The real shift happens when you start to change your relationship with yourself. Remember how I said that people you attract are mirrors of your broadcast? Well, your broadcast is a mirror of how you relate to yourself. If you're harsh and critical with yourself, you'll attract people who are harsh and critical. If you abandon your own needs, you'll attract people who abandon you. If you don't trust yourself, you'll attract people who can trust you. If you don't believe you're worthy of love, you'll attract people who can't love you the way you deserve. The work is not out there, it is here inside. I started to shift my pattern when I started to shift how I treated myself, when I stopped abandoning my own needs to meet everyone else, when I stopped accepting behavior from others that I wouldn't accept from myself, when I started believing, even just a little bit, that I deserved consistent love. That internal shift changed my broadcast. And my broadcast changing changed who showed up. It wasn't overnight, it wasn't a magic switch. It was gradual, like slowly tuning a radio dial until the static cleared and the new station came through. But the new people who started showing up, they were different. Not perfect, but different. They matched a different frequency. One of the biggest shifts for me was when I stopped fighting against the wrong people and started moving toward the right track. What's the difference? Fighting against is I will not attract another emotional unavailable person. I'm going to screen harder, have better boundaries, be more careful, protect myself better. That's still focused on the problem. It's still on the same frequency, just with more resistance. Moving toward this, I'm going to focus on what healthy connection feels like in my body. I'm going to practice that feeling. I'm going to make it familiar to me. I'm going to notice when I feel safe, seen, valued, and move toward that, more of that. See the difference? One is trying to avoid something, the other is orienting toward something that you want. Your broadcast goes where your attention goes. If all your attention is on avoiding the wrong people, you are still focused on the wrong people. You are still on that frequency. But when you start to focus on what you actually want, not as a desperate need, but as a natural preference, your broadcast starts to shift. When you actually change your broadcast and shift to a different track, it feels, oh well, weird at first. Remember how I said wrong feels right when it's familiar? Well, right feels wrong when it's unfamiliar. When I finally started attracting different types of people, my first instinct was to run. They felt too stable, too available, too easy. Where was the chase? Where was the drama? Where was the need to prove myself? It felt boring, flat, like something was missing. My nervous system was so wired for chaos that calm felt like danger, like the calm before the storm, like I should brace myself for the other shoe to drop. But I stayed. I didn't run. I sat with the discomfort of unfamiliar healthy. And slowly, my system started to rewire. Calm started to feel like safety instead of boredom. Consistency started to feel like reliability instead of predictability. Availability started to feel like kindness instead of neediness. The frequency that felt right was changing. Here is something nobody tells you. When you change your broadcast, some people will fall away. Not because you're cutting them off or because they're bad people, but because you're no longer a match for the invisible agreement you had. I had friendships that dissolved when I stopped being the constant helper, when I stopped being available 24/7 for emotional support, when I started having boundaries about my time and my energy. Those friendships were built on an agreement where I played the giver and they played the taker. When I stopped playing that role, there was no relationship left. And yeah, that hurt. It felt like loss. It felt like maybe I was the problem. But looking back, those relationships were keeping me on a track I didn't want to be on. They were reinforcing a broadcast that said, my value is in my uselessness, in me being useful. Letting them fall away made space for relationships built on mutual respect, kindness, love, and connection. The people who are meant to be in your life will match your new frequency, and the ones who don't, they were only ever meant to be there for the old one. You know you've shifted tracks when you start having these moments. Someone does something that would have triggered you before, and instead of your old reaction, you feel nothing, or curiosity, or compassion, but not the old activated feeling. You meet someone new and you can feel immediately that they are not a match. And instead of trying to make it work anyway, you just don't. You notice yourself choosing differently without having to force it. You're just not interested in the things that used to hook you. Someone who would have been exactly your type before seems completely unappealing now. Not because you're judging them, but because you don't resonate with that energy anymore. You feel calm and settled in yourself in a way you didn't before, and that calm feels good instead of boring. For me, the moment I knew I'd shifted was when I met someone who had all the markers of my old pattern: emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, a project I could focus on fixing, and I felt absolutely no pull toward them. Like I could see objectively that they were my type, but they didn't feel like my type. The frequency didn't match anymore. That's when I knew the broadcast had changed. The track had shifted. Once you've been on a different track for a while, your nervous system recalibrates. What used to feel normal starts to feel strange. What used to feel right starts to feel clearly wrong. You develop a new baseline. I can't go back to relationships that require me to abandon myself now. Not because I'm trying to have boundaries, but because it feels wrong. Wrong in my body, like wearing shoes that don't fit. I can't go back to friendships where I'm doing all the emotional labor. Not because I've decided not to, but because I don't resonate with that dynamic anymore. I can go back to accepting breadcrumbs of attention and calling it love. See, I cannot even say it. Not because I'm following rules, but because I know what love and kindness feels like. This is what happens when you change tracks. Your tolerance for the old patterns drops to zero, not from willpower, discipline, but from preference. You just don't want that anymore. But here's the thing: changing tracks is not a one time event, it's a practice. Your old patterns will try to pull you back. Old frequencies will call to you, especially in moments of loneliness or doubt or fear. You will be tempted to go back to familiar, even when you know it's not good for you. The practice is catching yourself, noticing when you're about to slip back into old agreements, old roles, old ways of relating. It's asking yourself, is this person matching my new frequency? Or am I trying to force a connection with someone who's still on my old track? Is being willing to be alone rather than slip back into patterns that don't serve you. It's remembering that the right people are on the new track, not the old one. So every time you slip back to the old track to avoid being alone, you are actually moving away from the people you want to find. Think about it. Here is what I want you to understand: the people who are right for you already exist. They are not people you need to create or convince or convert. They are already out there on the track you're trying to get on. They are broadcasting a frequency that matches who you are when you're not performing or proving or protecting. They are looking for the same kind of connection you want. They are wondering where you are, but they cannot find you if you're still on the old track, still broadcasting the old frequency, still attracting the old patterns. You have to get to where they are. You have to shift your broadcast to match theirs. And when you do, you won't have to search for them. You won't have to force it or make it happen or strategize your way into meeting them. You'll just find each other. The way people are matching is based on the frequency. And they always match on the frequency they're at. Easily, naturally, like you were always supposed to meet. The people you keep attracting are not the problem. They are the feedback. They are showing you what you're broadcasting. They are mirroring the track you're on. They are confirming the invisible agreements you're making. And once you understand that, really understand it, you stop blaming them. Stop blaming yourself. Stop blaming fate or bad luck or timing. You just change the broadcast. You shift the track. You update the agreement. Not from force, not from fixing, not from trying harder. From understanding. From awareness. From a shift in how you relate to yourself. And then everything changes. Not because you found the right person, but because you became the right frequency.